Well, it's so good to see old faces. Somebody pointed out that mine definitely looks older. That's okay, it does. It's good to see new faces. If you don't know me, I'm Tim Norman. I used to preach here before Wayne and after Wayne, and it's so good to be back. I've got a long way to go in this presentation on New York, so I just want to say that I love you and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I know that's the same sentiment of Tammy. Now, Tammy doesn't age. She's the ever beautiful one. So we appreciate and love you so very much. Start out talking about New York City, and I appreciate the sentiment. It's a challenging place, but every place has its challenges, and I count it a great blessing that I'm able to serve the kingdom of God in any way, and certainly in New York City. So if you don't know my clan or you haven't seen it in a while, here's the whole Peanuts gang. You see Tammy and I there in the background, Elizabeth, Nathan, and Zoe and Mary. They're a set. If you don't know that, the ones to over here. Then we have Sarah and Tim over on the other side. And then Caleb, my little boy, is the one that's 6'3", 250 pounds. That's his wife and their 3 children. So we've multiplied and we are abundantly blessed. And it's really not about the kids anymore. I went the wrong way. It's really about the grandkids. A beautiful lot. We are abundantly blessed. So we left here, we went to Northwest Arkansas. And after 3 years, it was time to move on. And so we found out that the church in Manhattan, New York City was looking for somebody, and we were looking for somebody, and we found each other. And so we loaded up the truck, and we didn't move to Beverly. We moved to Manhattan. This was our house in Springdale before we moved, but we put up the sale sign. At that point, we had 3 cars. We had just bought a Subaru Forester about 4 months earlier, not knowing we were going to be moving. But we had 3 cars. I was going to sell the oldest car. Just hadn't got around to it yet. So we sold our 3 cars, and we literally loaded up the truck. That thing was full, to the brim. I'm not sure if Anthony could have gotten any more in there if he tried. He probably could. But that thing was full, and we were moving to an 800 to 900 square foot apartment. And let's just say that there was a whole lot more in that truck than that particular apartment could handle. But we went naively anyway, and we got rid of a lot of stuff. I think physical possession-wise, we probably have about 25% of what we had when we lived here. But that's good. It's believe it or not, it is enriching in living to get rid of a lot of stuff. A whole lot of stuff is a burden that you really don't appreciate that it is. And so we feel like we've been blessed to get rid of a lot of physical stuff. And we're actually in the mood to get rid of even more. So we moved to Manhattan. If you're not familiar with Manhattan, Manhattan's right here in the middle, and you can see that it's surrounded by water. Let me show you a little bit about the facts of the area. Population of the metro area is about 20 million people. Big place. New York City has 5 boroughs: the Bronx, Queens, Brooklyn, Staten Island, and Manhattan. I am proud to say that while we did turn Wayne Fancher loose on Manhattan, Manhattan did survive. It was close, but it did survive. We enjoyed having them so much. Manhattan is an island, 13.4 miles long, 2.3 miles wide, 23 square miles. Population is 1.629 million, which gives you 66,940 people per square mile. And I'm trying to make this meaningful. So basically, if you divided the island into squares, 21 feet square, everybody would have a square. And that's a lot of people. It's hard to visualize how many people that is, but that's a lot of folks. And now if you look there on the bottom, you'll see the yellow light blinking. What I want to do is to look up the island from the base. So this is looking up at the very end of the Manhattan Island. Very famous. That's the one trade center which replaced the Twin Towers. So we're going to go up the island from here. So that's looking at the top. You're looking back at what we just saw, and you go up through Midtown Manhattan, and we're going to turn around and look at it from the other direction. All right, so it's a big place with a lot of concrete. It's a concrete jungle, you might say. Now, to give you points of reference, that's Central Park. You can barely see the green there. And that's where our church meets. So let me give you maybe a way you can see that a little better. Here's a map with Central Park. Central Park there is the green arrow. Where we meet is where the blue arrow is. And we've now lived 3 different places in Manhattan. First place we lived was here. Second place we lived was there, but not very far apart at all. And now we live farther down Broadway. And we'll tell you about that in a moment. So, what's it like to live in Manhattan? I appreciate the opportunity to share this with you because I think as supporters, generous supporters of me as you are, it's good for you to understand where your investment is going to. So let's talk about living in Manhattan. First thing, the residences. I mean, what's it like as far as housing goes in Manhattan? Well, that building is our first building we lived in. First building we lived in. And you go up the elevator and you went down a long hall, and that was our door at the end of the hall. This is our first residence. Behind that door, you have this massive foyer, and I'm being a little sarcastic. And if you look down, basically, this is the opposite of that long hall separated by the door. And it was so narrow that you really couldn't have 2 people pass each other without turning sideways. It was a nice apartment. We enjoyed it, but it was incredibly small. This was the living room. We had really nice windows, and this is what it was like looking out them. This is what you saw. One direction, if you look south, you saw this. Now, if on certain nights, if you could stand on the corner of the couch you saw just a moment ago and look, like the climatic conditions were just right, you could see a blinking red light. That blinking red light was the top of the what building, Tammy? Empire State Building. So I would tell people that we had an Empire State Building view in our apartment. This was our bedroom. It was so small you had to get around it, you had to turn sideways. It was tiny. Now the first night we spent in this apartment, I don't know why, and I hope this will work for most of y'all. I don't know why, but I woke up and I saw this. So I got my phone out and I took a picture. You know what I thought, don't you? When you get stuck between the moon and New York City, you know it's crazy, but it's true. Now, if you're less than 40 years of age, you don't get that at all. Go Google it and you'll understand. We had a nice size bathroom, a nice size kitchen. We had some places to store things. Storage is a premium in Manhattan. You know you're living in a different environment when you realize that your box spring is just a box and you can actually put things back there. Anytime you can find a little space, you're excited. So we stored everything we could. This was the view outside the kitchen window. Just a different world, as you can clearly see. This was our guest bedroom, ready for guests. So here's some facts about it. The apartment was no more than 900 square feet. There was absolutely no place for a dining room table. You just couldn't set one up. Very little storage. You only had to put a $32,800 security deposit down. That's all you needed to do to get in. And the rent was a mere $4,230 a month. So that's life in Manhattan. But I thought, this was during COVID, the prices got really depressed. So I thought maybe we could get us a better, bigger place for cheaper. And so this is looking out our bedroom window. at the first place, and that's actually the red arrow is designating the place we moved into next. So you could see one from the other. And to show you how far we moved, it wasn't very far. We moved from there to here. So let me tell you about our second. Why did we move? Well, it was larger. They had a real nice outdoor terrace. They had a gym, which was good for me and my health. And it was less expensive, $700 a month, less expensive. And we got quite a bit more square footage. So we thought, that's a great idea. And for a while, it was okay. Here's the building, what it looked like. Here was the entrance to the apartment. We had another long way to get into the guts, you might say, of the apartment, but it was really ideal for us because I was able to put all my library in this hallway. We had a pretty good sized living room. There was no windows, which made it kind of dark and dungeon-like, but it was larger. But there was trade-offs, a larger living room, but the kitchen was really, really small. The bathroom was really, really small, but we did have a place to actually put a dining room table. What was bigger was the rooms. This is our guest bedroom, and it was huge. That was my office. And then we had the master bedroom that was really big, so we enjoyed it. I mean, it did have a place to sit outside that was real nice. If you look down the road, that's what it looked like. If you look straight across from where you sat, you saw the Hudson River. So that was really nice. But after 1 year, the rent increased from $3,500 to $5,700 a month. $2,200 increase in 1 year. And so we said we could not afford that. So we went out with the old and in with the new. This is where we're living now. And we're incredibly blessed to be here. One of our members is a broker, a real estate broker. This was his apartment, and he got it for us. It was only through the providence of God and the help of brethren that we were able to get this apartment. So this is our new place. You notice what that is. That's a balcony, and it's a huge balcony. We'll talk about that in a moment. So I'll show you where we live now. This is the Lincoln Center. It's a fine arts installation that was about 3 blocks from us. We're about 2 blocks from Juilliard. But this is the new apartment. This is where we're living now. It's all these places tend to be long and deep, but it's very roomy. Tammy makes it a wonderful home. This is looking up the other direction. Now what I thought we might do is separate this is the bedroom, and we thought it would be good to separate it by our bookshelves so that we basically had an office and a sitting room as well as a bedroom. And we did that, and it's worked out real well. This is not typically the way it looks. This is the way it was looked when we were making the transition. But that's turned out to be very nice, very helpful. We have a huge balcony. By New York standards, that's a huge balcony, and it's nice to have when the weather permits. Tammy's fixed it up nice. She's made it a comfortable place to sit outside and enjoy, and we do enjoy it. We're able to, and looking straight across, it's kind of interesting. You look straight across from our balcony, you see the AMC Theater. And periodically, about once every 3 weeks, they change these pictures. So you always have something kind of interesting to look at. This is looking north from our balcony. This is looking south from our balcony. And I think this is time well spent just to give you a feel for what life is like there. One thing we do like about living there is there are definite seasons. And it does definitely different seasons, more so than any place I've ever lived. And so this is the same perspective just from a wintry point of view. But we like our apartment a lot. We're able to have people in. We can handle about 40 people pretty comfortably. And that was a gathering of our congregation there. This is looking at it from the other end. People would spill over into the balcony and enjoyed it a lot. So we're blessed to be where we're at now. So that's what it's like to live. How do you get around? That's interesting. We don't have a car at all. To park a car, you'd either have to do it on the street, which would drive you nuts because as soon as you go somewhere, you lose your spot and you have to go find another one. And that's maddening. And if you find one, you have to move it twice a week for the street cleaners. So if you're going to have a car and you're going to park it on the street, it's going to control your life a lot. If you're going to have a car and rent a place to actually park it, it's probably $700, $800 a month. So we just got rid of our cars. You don't really need your cars. You can walk a whole lot in New York City. I mean, New York City is about walking, and it's very pedestrian friendly, which is not true of the South. I mean, when you get used to walking and you cross some major streets in the South, you take your life into your own hands a lot of times. But you walk, and you walk in all weather. That's Tammy walking in the rain. You get really used to having umbrellas. It's a necessity. And whatever you buy at the grocery store, you have to carry home, unless you want to get a cab or something like that. So it's interesting. Subway, we use it all the time. It's relatively safe. We don't really think too much about safety issues. You have to be smart, but it's fine. That's my dad and me waiting for the subway to come. That's my oldest granddaughter, my oldest daughter there in the background on the subway. It's a neat way of transporting. It never gets boring, let me put it that way. It never gets boring. Then you can take buses. This is Tammy on a bus on the way to the airport one winter. And you get really close to people sometimes. There's certain hours, rush hour, when you get in the bus, I mean, you can literally be right here from somebody you've never met before. It's like, you know what a sardine feels like. So that's different. I never thought that, it never crossed my brain that I would feel comfortable hailing cabs. But I can do it just like any old New Yorker can now. This was us on the way here in our cabs. So cabs, you take them, they're expensive, but you have to take them sometimes. Now here we are on the plane. I got the picture without Tammy being aware of it. We fly a lot more because we don't have a car. We take trains. They're kind of cool. I could tell you stories about trains. And as we've already talked about cars, and the space is so limited, that's one of the inventive ways they've come to store more cars. So really cars are out of the picture, but there's a lot of public transportation we can use. So let's talk a little bit about some of the disadvantages of living in New York City. If you just look at that picture, what strikes you? Hopefully the trash, because it's a dirty place. There's no pride of place in New York City. People will just take whatever they've got in their hands as trash. Instead of taking 5 steps over and putting it in the basket, they'll just throw it down. It's not their problem, it's somebody else's problem. And I really get frustrated with that. But here's some disadvantages. First of all, it is dirty. It's crowded. It's crude. It's an R-rated existence. I mean, doesn't matter who you are or who you're with, people are going to cuss a blue streak and they don't care. And it's just the way life is up there. And it's really disconcerting sometimes. People tend to be rude. Now, it's a tough environment to live in. I mean, and I think probably the rudeness is a function of just how frustrating the lifestyle is. The way I used to describe living in Manhattan, it's like somebody taking their finger and thumping you on the forehead about 11 times a day. It doesn't debilitate you. It won't keep you from doing what you otherwise do, but it sure does irritate you. And if somebody did that to you every day, day in, day out, you might be kind of rude yourself in dealing with other people. But we found that once you get through the shell, Northerners are just as kind and friendly as anybody else. And so you just got to be patient with people and give them time to warm up to you. It can be dangerous, but it's like any town. I mean, Houston, there's places in Houston or in Little Rock. There's places you don't really want to be even during the day, and you certainly don't want to be there during the night. And New York's like that. And a lot of times we'll get calls from brethren and friends saying, "Are y'all okay? Are you safe?" And we don't even know what you're talking about. So it is dangerous, but if you use some common sense, it's fine. It can be hard to live there. I mean, everything is just harder. I mean, like going to the grocery store. You can't just throw your groceries in the trunk and go home. You got to go through a lot of things to get those things home. So it's harder lifestyle. It's expensive. The winters are long and cold. It's like a whole different country. It's definitely not what you're used to, but I'm admitting to others that I'm starting getting used to the lifestyle, and there are definitely parts about it that I enjoy. It's a very secular place. God is not a part of the equation in large measure. What you do when you walk around town is you'll see these cathedrals. I mean, almost every block has an incredible cathedral, but by and large, they're empty. And what tells you that at some point there was some spiritual fervor there, but it's long since gone. And people are constantly pushing the envelope, trying to get more and more decadent all the time. And I'll just leave that with you. But this is, I think, a fair warning to us. I think that these places are kind of like 30 to 50 years ahead of us. And I think that if we're not careful in the South, we're going to start looking like this sooner than later. So it's time to preach repentance, definitely. And it can be an isolating thing. And we're getting over this somewhat. But you go up there and there's not a lot of brethren, and meeting people is a little more difficult than otherwise. And so you can feel kind of lonely. But we're doing better on that front. So those are some disadvantages. All right, now let's talk about some advantages of living there. The first is the food. The food is amazing. Did I tell you that? Did I mention the food is amazing? I mean, this is Cat's Deli, the pastrami sandwich. It is a beautiful thing. I'll not linger too long here. This is braised pork belly. If I am ever, and God forbid, but if I'm ever convicted of a capital crime and I'm going to be put to death and I'm able to order my final meal, this would be my final meal. It is amazing. What else? The pizzas. There's a reason why New York Pizzas has the reputation that they have. They are awesome. I don't know if I can go back to normal pizzas. Bagels. This is a bagel with lox spread, with lox and capers and onions. Oh man, it's so good. This is what they call soup dumplings. You know how sometimes you'll cook meat and the meat juice will gel? What they do is they do that on purpose, and they cut them up in little squares. They put a little piece of meat and they put a square of gel in these wrappers, and they seal them up real tight, and then they steam them. And so what happens when you bite into them is the gel melts, and you got this soup in there with the meat, and it explodes in your mouth, and it's amazing. It's really good. The food is good. And I'm making that impression. Here's one thing that I've discovered: bacon on a stick. You go to a Yankees home game, you can buy for $10, you can buy a huge piece of bacon on a stick. That's really good. You probably notice that I'm not a real health nut when it comes to food. Now this is a lobster roll. Very, very, very good. I don't eat those very often. They're kind of expensive. But the one thing about eating in Manhattan is that while it's expensive to eat out, it's also expensive to buy groceries. So that it's not really that much more to eat out than to cook at home. So we eat out a lot. Another thing about New York, while it's expensive, the portions are very large, so you can get more than one meal out of them. For example, let's say you bought a hot dog. You would think in New York it would just be a normal hot dog. No, you can get several meals off a hot dog. Tammy illustrates this. Here's the hot dog she bought the other day. You can get several meals out of what you buy. All right, and it's fun to eat outside. There's not bugs, so it's fun to eat outside when weather permits. And it's fun to eat with brethren. Here's a gathering of our brethren. We try to eat together a lot because that's probably the best way for us to connect with each other on a social basis, so we eat out together a lot. So food is definitely an advantage. There are museums and those kind of things that are cool. There are sporting events that are cool. Now, I want you to notice this. I mean, I bet this hasn't happened to you. Notice the Jumbotron there in the middle of the screen. Who's that, I wonder? Well, let's blow it up. Me and Tammy and her sister. I mean, you're supporting a fellow who's been on the Yankees Jumbotron. Money well spent, obviously. So there's sporting events that you can enjoy. My brother-in-law there, to my right, your left, I guess, he wanted to tour Yankee Stadium, so we actually got to go into the visitors' dugout. That was cool. What else? There's all kinds of arts and entertainment type stuff. This is the New York Philharmonic. There's free concerts all the time. This was Winston Marsalis and his band putting on a free concert in Central Park. They show movies free in parks a lot of times. And the girl in the background there standing up is a winner of what's that show called? What? American Idol, yeah. We didn't watch this season. We hadn't watched it for a while, but apparently she was a winner. And the girl there in the background sitting opposite Tammy looking at her taught her in school. So that's why when she walked by, they saw each other and made a connection. And she actually sang a song for Tammy and the other ladies. That's pretty cool. And celebrities, that's another aspect of New York life, is celebrity sightings. Until recently, my biggest sighting was Al Roker. Not too high on the impressive scale. But the other day I was walking around, about 3 or 4 months ago, I turned around, there was Bill Murray. So it's kind of interesting to see people that you see on TV and such. But my problem is that if you were famous after 95, I have no idea who you are. And my kids will sit there and say, "Oh, did you see so-and-so?" And I say, "No. Apparently they were famous, but I was clueless about it." So a lot of entertainment type stuff. Seasonal activities are really cool. They make winter as fun as it can be. Now, if you'll know me, I love flowers, and they have just all kinds of beautiful gardens, and I'll give you some samples of some of the pictures I've taken lately. These are not necessarily my best, but they're just what's happened in the last couple of months. They love gardening in New York City, and I appreciate that so much. Beautiful stuff. And they have different gardens. There's your intrepid photographer right there, Tammy. Took a picture of me doing my thing. And this is a garden in Central Park. This is the actual botanical gardens of New York City. It's a beautiful place. This is, if you've ever seen the movie You've Got Mail, if you remember there was a garden at the very end of the movie. This is that garden, and we go there all the time. This was a garden that we did in the second place we lived. So if this is the building and here you are, there was another building like right here. And so you can only see down so far, given your point of view. I don't know if I'm explaining that or not. But if you looked out our only window we had in the bedroom, you could only look down we were on the 14th floor. You only look down about 6 floors, and then you couldn't see any further down. Lo and behold, we discovered after half the time of living there, that there was a garden there. And so that was kind of a neat, exciting thing. This is the Brooklyn Garden. And this is what they call the Wave Hill Gardens. We discovered that one. Just a lot of beautiful things like that. This is 28th Street, what they call the Garden District. You can go there to buy any kind of flowers you can imagine. And it's really fun to walk up and down. So you got historical things. I need to move on here. Historical things. This is Tammy and I. We climbed the inside of the Statue of Liberty. And that's us at the Crown. That was a really neat experience. So all kinds of historical stuff. There's the Empire State Building. There's the World Trade Center again. One World Tower. They celebrate the national holidays well. Brooklyn Bridge is fun to walk. And this is us recently with our two of our granddaughters. And in the background is the original Winnie the Pooh that inspired the writings in the TV shows, the movies. And this is Tammy at the General Assembly Room of the United Nations. Now, I told David I was going to explain to him, some people wonder with Biden being in this physical condition he is in, who's really running the country behind the scenes. Well, y'all don't know this, but they found a conservative guy that was living in Manhattan that they thought might be able to fill the gap, fill the void. And I'm trying as best as I can, brother. Trying as best as I can. There was a museum that had a mock of the Oval Office. I thought that was kind of cool. So there's all kinds of things to do historically. The parks are your salvation. Central Park, if they didn't have Central Park, you'd go crazy. But it's so nice because within about a 5-minute walk, you can be in this environment, out of the concrete jungle. And as soon as you walk into the park, it's just like a burden is lifted from your shoulders. Whoever did what needed to be done to create Central Park was a very wise person. It's a beautiful place. Thoroughly love it. We're there every day, pretty much. Just so much to see and so much to do. Tammy and I would sometimes spend a whole day in the park. We set up our little space, and sometimes with the brethren, After worship, what we'll do is we'll gather in the park for a meal. It's just it's a godsend. I appreciate God. Now there's weirdos, strange people all over the place in New York City. So here's one. They have some statutes that are kind of comparably weird. I found that, and I found this one. And I would encourage y'all to pray for Tammy. You know, Tammy gets carried away sometimes. And, you know, it's like the old expression, you can't stop her, you can only contain her. You know, I mean, see what I mean? You just never know with Tammy. All right. So now, and the architecture is really cool. You have to remind yourself to look up. There's just a whole lot of cool sights to see. I recently had to go to jury duty, and this is where I went to for jury duty. So, but definitely some interesting sights to see. Nighttime is interesting to take pictures. You get a whole different perspective. They have street fairs regularly. They'll block Broadway off, and you can walk up and down, enjoy different venues. This is a beach, obviously, but it's within the parameters of the city limits in New York City. So you can actually go to the beach in New York City. There's a lot to do to keep yourself occupied. But let's talk about the biggest advantage that outweighs all of the disadvantages, and that's God's people that are there in Manhattan. Now here, I've got two pictures that represent the congregation. I think this is everybody except two ladies who are Indians, not Native American Indians, but India Indians. Their picture I did not have, so I wasn't able to include in here. But here, just take a moment and look at the faces. What you see, I think, is a whole bunch of ethnic and cultural diversity. We have people representing 5 different continents, everything but it's Australia and Antarctica. And so it's a wonderful place to see what heaven's going to be like as far as cultural diversity is concerned. We dearly love these brethren. They're just wonderful to work with. It's just been a great blessing. This is what keeps us here, is the congregation and the opportunities we have to share the gospel with others. So our congregation made of different races, different cultures, different nationalities, different religious backgrounds. Pre-COVID, our attendance was 65 on Sunday, 19 on Tuesday. The last time I was there, we had 68 on Sunday and 21. So we've pretty much recovered from COVID and are back on the way up. And we're happy about that. We had a baptism yesterday, in fact. We don't have elders, unfortunately, but the congregation is very spiritually minded. They're unified, very evangelistic. The fields are very ripe into harvest. It's an amazing place to work because you do not have to go try to find somebody to study with. They come to you. And I mean that literally. Pretty much every week there's somebody that you can have a Bible study with. And it's really cool. The challenges are we rent our space by the hour. So you have to set that up and break down everything every service. That gets old, but that's just the way it works. Our capacity is about 100 people. So there's an upward limit to how many we can use in the space we have. And in COVID, we tried to find another place. And it's a really expensive place to find somewhere to meet. So we would pray for you to help us find another place where we can grow even more. Parking is a problem, and like I said, we don't have elders, so there's some challenges. But we count ourselves so blessed to be there. This is the building which we meet as a youth hostel, and if you'll notice over there to your left, I guess, the arrow, that's pointing to where we actually meet, which is in the basement in the rear of this building. And it suits our purposes very well. We put out a banner every day that we have a service. They let us do that. And they let us put up a banner in the lobby. They're very kind to us about that. Now this is where we meet. This is for looking at the pulpit, looking backwards. And this is looking from the back part of it, looking forward to the pulpit. So that's where we meet. Here's an example with people occupying it. There's yours truly preaching the word. Every time. That booth back there, which you set up once and you don't think about again, give God thanks for that every time you pray. Because I'll show you, if you take this picture, that's pretty much our system. Before I moved there, they had all these separate parts that they fit every time. But I got the idea that maybe we could make it simpler, so I put Velcro on the bottom of these component parts. And so we only have to unhook so many things. But still, yes, every service you have to break down everything and leave it the way you found it. So don't take some things for granted. Now, I would not doubt that. All I would say is our relationship with the hostel has been very good. We've actually met there for 20 years. And so they do raise the rent, but it's usually not out of any reasonable bounds. So thankfully, that's not been a problem for us. Now, when we have children's class, which we suspended from COVID and haven't got back to, we broke off a section of the space for the children's class that represents that. And that's looking down in it, and you can see what the kids are being taught, how the kids are being taught. The yellow in the background is the mamas who are nursing and taking care of kids. You make the best of what you have. Tuesday night class, we meet on Tuesday instead of Wednesday because I think that was the only place they could get space. They give us a place to store our stuff. We've had to move it to this space, so it's a smaller space, but that's where we store our stuff each week. We don't have to take everything home with us every time. Now, periodically, what we do in the summer months is have a group of folks meet to hand out flyers, and this is the group that does that. And we've been setting up tables and things like that, and we've had some good results. I'll talk about that in just a moment. But what we hand out is these flyers. We hand out what we call salvation cards, and it's been effective. The lady there on your right is Yolanda, sitting by Tammy. And when Wayne was holding a meeting for us, she walked by and she said, "Are you telling me there's a church in this place?" And we said, "Yes, there was." That's 5 minutes. I said, "Yes, it's a good long 5 minutes." So she said, we told her yes. And anyway, long story short, she's placed membership with us. So don't discount the impact of doing things like that. You never know how God is going to use them. Baptisms, okay. That is a portable baptistry. We fill that up in our apartment. That's where we baptize people, in our apartment. And we've had several baptisms. I won't detail it all. I'm running out of time. But these are the baptisms that we've experienced since we've been there. I'm not sure what the total number is, but like I said, we just had another one yesterday. It's not reflected in this list. But it's just been a wonderful place to be able to find people that are interested in God and help them join the body of Christ. And there will be one more listed. Now on your right, in the purple shirt, that's my new co-preacher friend and fellow worker, Bill. And I knew that we were destined to work well together when they came to visit and we did this. It just was a match made in heaven. And this is a more serious picture of them with Bill and his wife, Judy. So now we have help, and I'm still staying as busy as I've ever been. During COVID, that was interesting. We did what a lot of people did, that we were banned from the hostel. And so we did remote, we didn't have a place to literally meet. They were really hard and strict in New York City. And so we broadcast remotely. That was me broadcasting, and this is a picture of our members watching online. So we did that for a while. We did some Zoom, I think they're called, meetings. Those were some of the most impactful meetings I've ever had. We were together, isolated, and so we came together electronically, and we had some sessions that were just amazing. Can't tell you how much I appreciated those things. And then we started singing in the park, and then we started meeting in the park. That was so cool. I wish I had more time to talk about it. But we just picked a place and started meeting there, and the reaction to the crowds was brilliant. They were very kind to us. And there's me preaching out by the river, and we finally got back under strict conditions, and now everything is back to normal. So that's kind of a brief discussion of what happened to us during COVID. Now, what do we do each week? We have a bulletin each week. Bill is now doing that for me. We try to hand out lesson sheets for our classes, every class. Sermon outlines are usually a part of the product picture, not necessarily always. We send out materials if you're interested. Now, that's kind of been on hold since we made the transition with Bill, but we're going to get back to that. We have everything on Facebook. We have a Facebook site which all the sermons are there. If you ever want to listen to wonder what's going on, you can listen to sermons there. We've got a website that's apparently very effective because so many people find us through it. And then I do my monthly support report. So let me wrap this up. Here are a few thoughts. First of all, it's expensive to live there, but on opportunities per dollar spent basis, the work I think in New York City is a great investment. It pays ample dividends. In other words, a dollar spent here gets access to a whole lot more people than probably here would. And so you got to think of it in terms of that to get the true value. The advantage it has over other areas, there's a stark contrast between good and evil. I think we have a lot of opportunities in Manhattan because the distinction is so clear, so vivid, that there are people waking up and saying there's got to be a better way. Here, there's still, the line is still kind of cloudy in some people's mind. So that helps us have possible evangelistic opportunities. And really, it's interesting, there is extremely liberal congregations in Manhattan, or specialized ones, or there's us. And because there's not anything in between, we get a lot of opportunities that we wouldn't otherwise expect. So it's been a wonderful experience. We talked about our long-term needs already. One thing I've come to understand is that the church is not a white Southern American institution. Brethren, sometimes we think that what we experience is the whole of the church. The church is worldwide, and it looks different in different places. Now, it preaches and practices the same things, but there's a wide enough judgment and variation ability within that to just be careful that we don't overgeneralize and paint a wrong picture of the church. What Wayne did when he saw the congregation and saw its cultural diversity, he said, this is what heaven's going to look like. And I think that's exactly true. It's going to be much more diverse than sometimes we imagine. I think we need to be very careful not to bind opinions or use unfair labels. I think that's an area that we need to be very careful about. There's no excuse for self-righteousness. These are just some things that I've come to learn. A lot of times less is more. There's a great advantage of not being weighed down by physical things. And so sometimes you might want to do yourself a break and get rid of some stuff. The restoration plea is necessary, is needed today as it has ever been. I can't tell you how much we need to get God's people to unite on the basis of the restoration plea. If I had more time, I could go into that. And finally, there's a great potential in love. I'm excited about living there, and I want to continue to live there for the time being until God changes things. Because there's a church there that is amazing, and because there are amazing opportunities to share the gospel with other people. And if we will love our fellow men like we should, and I appreciate your love for me so much. I can't tell you how much it means to me to be in fellowship with you in this work. The sky is absolutely the limit, and I believe that more than I ever have. So remember that God is love, and if we will love like we should, and ironically, I had this picture, and there's that one over there. They look extremely similar, but the message is the same. Don't forget what the greatest commandment of all is. It's to love the Lord your God, your heart with all your soul, mind, strength. And the second is like it, which is to love your neighbor as yourself. So there's great potential in love, and I hope in showing you a little slice of life in New York City, that you will feel comforted in the fact that you're helping save souls. We didn't talk about the specific people that were baptized, But every one of those baptisms, you had a part in the investment that led to that. And that's something you should feel good about and glorify God in being able to do. So thank y'all very much.